Okay, so we asked this question. Question was, is Hashem affected by our Torah study, by our mitzvahs, or not? And we found different sources in the Torah that says that he is. Other sources in the Torah which say that he isn't. And we answered that it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about the godliness that is, the way Hashem contracted himself in the spiritual cosmos and the lights, the vessels of the various worlds, and certainly there is an impact through our Torah, through our mitzvahs, on those levels. There's a famous teaching of the Gemara about the height of the mikveh of the Kohen Gadol. The Gemara says that the Kohen Gadol's mikveh must have been, I think, 23 amos. Why? How do we know that this was the case? Because the wellspring, Meinetam, which filled the mikveh, the Kohen Gadol, it was in this height on the mountain of the Beis Hamikdash, and since the mountain was at this height, it cannot be that the mikveh was higher than its source. So the mikveh therefore must have been lower than the size of than the place where the water was coming out from. So Chassidus uses this halacha to understand the impact of our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, in heaven, and says that before the giving of the Torah, you cannot say that Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov reached higher than their source. All they could reach was their source, and therefore they were limited to what level of godliness they could draw down to the world. They could only draw down as much as their source. This changed, and Hashem gave us the Torah, and now the first word of the giving of the Torah is Anochi. Anochi is an acronym. Anochi means I, and it's an acronym for the words I, my soul, I wrote it and gave it. That means Hashem gives us the very essence of His soul with the Torah. So it's possible for us, when we learn Torah, do a mitzvah, to connect to God's essence. So we're going to see, Mr. Hashem, how Torah mitzvahs affects, so to speak, Hashem Himself also. Through the giving of the Torah, Hashem chose to enter this relationship on, so to speak, His deepest self. On Hashem Himself is in the relationship as well. But on the surface, we learned yesterday, which is explained in other places in Chassidus, that even post Sinai, even after the Torah was given, when Hashem empowered us through our Torah, through our mitzvahs, to cause changes in the spiritual cosmos, there is still a limit to how far it can go. The Kriya Shema Shalmita, in Shema before retiring, we ask Hashem to forgive us for various things, and then we say, if I have sinned before you and I've blemished the letter Yud in your name by not praying properly, by not wearing tzitzis properly, by not putting on tefillin properly, so then I blemished in the letters, various letters of your name which are associated with those mitzvahs, the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. So Hashem, please let me. Maybe it's not for Tuesday morning to say what we ask for, but if so, our mitzvahs certainly blemish in the letters of God's name. That's what we say in our prayers. And we learned yesterday what is the meaning of the blemish in the letters of God's name. So we said that in the godly energy, there are vessels and there are lights that are within those vessels. And when you puncture a vessel, it causes the light to depart, just like by human body. When the ear is something that's broken in the ear can cause the power of hearing to depart from the ear. The person cannot hear anymore. So in a similar way, a person blemishes the vessels of the Atzilus, he causes the light of Hashem to depart. So he blemishes not only the vessel, but also the light. Why is it considered a blemish for the light? The light just departs from the vessel. So we learned yesterday that since the whole purpose of the light is to illuminate, so the light cannot illuminate, so therefore the light is blemished as well. And the further we said, even in the source of the light, which is not yet in the vessel, and therefore it's not impacted by the blemish in the vessel, but still it is also affected by our actions. However, when it says in the Gemara, it says that our actions don't have an effect on the Eibishter, that's referring to the level called Atik. And we'll see today with Hashem more about this level, what this is, and why our mitzvahs cannot affect that level. Let's go to V'zeu. So our service of Hashem affects the level called Arich. The level called Arich is the source for all things that were emanated. We learned yesterday that Arich is the level of God's desire. Hashem contracted himself, so to speak, to function in a similar way, of course beyond, but analogous to the desire of a human being. And Hashem's desire for, let's say, the world of Atzilus, it will causes the world of Atzilus to exist. So Arich, Hushesh Netzolim, if I were to say that in English, I would say God's desire is the source for Atzilus. And since in Atzilus, our efforts do affect Atzilus, before I forget, please ask me after the class to post a letter to the Rebbe in English about why it's important to study about Atzilus. Okay. Therefore, also to the source of Atzilus, which is the level of desire, our efforts do have an effect. Because what is Arich? Arich is a desire for Atzilus. So if Arich's desire isn't fulfilled, if Atzilus is being broken, so that affects the desire for Atzilus. Arich is about the creation of Atzilus. So if there's something missing in Atzilus, so Arich is also missing. You have desire for something. If your desire isn't fulfilled, you're missing something. Arich is desire for Atzilus. If Atzilus is messed up, then Arich is missing something. It was only concerning the level called Atik do our sages say, what does he care? If you remember in the Maimer of Chanukah, we learned 3 translations of the word Atik. Atik means old, Atik means a copy, and Atik means distant. And all 3 translations are portraying the same thing. Atik is, so to speak, although it's post-Tzimtzum, it has a lot of similarities, if you will, to the state of existence before there was a Tzimtzum, in the sense that in Atik is a level where there is nothing else, even more than we learned about Chachma. The Chachma also is expression of how Hashem is alone, but Atik infinitely more so, incomparably more so. Chachma is still part of a world which Chachma is a space where Hashem's truth is revealed, that there's nothing besides him. Atik is beyond space. Atik means distant because it's before and higher and distant than anything outside of godliness. So it's a copy of what was before the Tzimtzum. It's distant, it's higher from all of creation. That's why it's called also old in the sense that it exists before creation. So in the level of Atik, we cannot say that our efforts in Torah mitzvahs make an impact, and that's what the Gemara means when it says, does Hashem care what side of the animal we slaughtered with? Atik is called the sole master, the source of all sources. It doesn't say he is the source of the emanated beings, just a source of sources. And that means that, as we learned yesterday, the analogy of desires that we have, they're not even conscious of, that they may be a source of other things that later affect us in life, but they're not directly affecting us at all. Our desire to have a home doesn't one day emerge with looking on Redfin and Zillow and how to buy a home. Rather, because you're born with innate desire to have a home, therefore, through preconditioning, that desire can emerge. So the desire of Arich, the level of Atik is called a source of sources. It's not yet a source for Atzilus, it's a source for the source of Atzilus. It's not at all connected to Atzilus. The truth is, Atik is separate from the sources as well. Meaning, Atik is not only distant from the world of Atzilus, Atik is distant, of course, not talking about geography over here, we're talking about it's infinitely higher, infinitely closer to the truth of Hashem. And Atik Mlashon V'yetak, the word Atik means to be separated. That means that Atik is separate even from its, so to speak, neighbor, the level of desire. Desire and Atik are distant from each other. Atik is not just distant from that Tzilus, Atik is distant from Arich. The truth is, calling it a source of sources is also a borrowed term. From Atik emanates Arich. From Arich emanates the world of Atzilus. Dr. Bressman is looking for our chart over here. Someone please, if you find a chart for Dr. Bressman, he would appreciate it more than a chart of the solar system. So, although Atik emanates Arich, and Arich is a source of emanation of Atzilus, however, we cannot really say about Atik that it's a source of sources either, because it's distant from Arich as well. It's not about producing the level of cold desire. Atik is unto itself. And it does, from Atik there emerges Arich, but Atik isn't meant, it's not directly a source for Arich. It's not about the creation of Arich. Atik wouldn't put in its resume that it is actually the producer of Arich. Atik would disavow any association with Arich because Atik is incomparably greater than Arich. Just for some context, the word desire in Hebrew is ratzin. Chassidus says that the word ratzin has the same letters as the word tzinar, which means pipe. That means when Hashem desires something, just like when we desire something, we are channeled to what we desire. We're attached to what we desire, as Baal Shem Tov taught, and as Rebbe repeated so many times, how you are where you desire to be. You are where your thoughts are. So your desire limits you and filters you and brings you to where you desire. So desire and contraction are very related to each other. Desire is above other soul powers. Desire isn't a thing. Desire means the nefesh tzitzich. Desire means that the soul itself is drawn to something. It's not a faculty of the soul. It's not the power of wisdom, the power of kindness. Those are faculties, just like our body has different faculties, the power to hear, the power to move. So our soul has also faculties. Then there is the soul itself being drawn to something, that's desire. So there's no self there's nothing other in the level of desire. However, the soul is drawn to the other. The soul is drawn to the outside. So therefore, the level of arech is beyond creation, but it still channels godliness towards creation, does limit and filter godliness to be associated with the world. It's about the desire for the world. Unlike the level of Atik, where Atik is a level which, as you learned in my Maimon of Chanukah, that Atik is Einin Mulvade, nothing besides Hashem. That's Atik. So we call Atik a source of sources. That's really a borrowed term. We call it a source of sources not because it tries to lead somewhere. Rather, it's a source of sources because from that something else emanates, and therefore we're calling it a source from sources. But it's not. Usually, the word source means that there's already a trace of what's going to be produced in its source. It's already about what comes next. Atik isn't about what comes next. Atik is only about Hashem, and there's nothing besides Hashem. Atik isn't about being a source for creation. By the way, Chochmah is about revealing the truth of Hashem. It's about revealing the truth of Hashem in the world of Atzilus. Yeah, Chochmah reveals nothing besides Hashem, but it's about revealing that truth. It's about how this truth of Hashem is projected to the outside. I don't know if you'll appreciate this parable, but this is a parable that was given by Chassidim for generations. My Zayde al Vashom shared this parable that he heard from Avram Parish. Avram Parish was one of the top Chassidim of our Rebbe, the previous Rebbe. I think he also was by the Rebbe Rashab. He said like this. He said that there was one Farbrengen, or maybe it wasn't a Farbrengen, maybe it was someone woke up with a bad feeling, and he started making fun of Avram Parish. Avram Parish was known for his total devotion to our Rebbe, to the extent that he put his mind aside in a way that we read in the last week's Torah portion. We will do before we understand. An example: the previous Rebbe wanted to print one of his Maimonim, and he asked Avram Parish to take it to the printer. And the previous Rebbe had given him a manuscript and said, print pages A to D, whatever pages it was. So he also put in the printing pages A to D. That was on the paper. The Rebbe wrote those words. You can take the words of the Rebbe off the paper? Of course not. So that was a mistake, right? The previous Rebbe didn't want the words print pages A to D on the paper. He just was instructing the guy, print pages A to D. So later, I think it was before Pesach, and the previous Rebbe wanted the document of the sale of chametz to be printed. And Rav Parij was asked to go print it. And someone muttered to the previous Rebbe, I hope he doesn't make a mistake on the printing. And the previous Rebbe responded, from Avram's agrayis came and learn. From Avram's mistakes, you can learn. You can learn something from his mistake. It's a mistake, but you can learn a lot from his mistake. So someone was making fun of Rav Parij about his Kabbalah sales, his total devotion to the Rebbe, putting his mind aside. So Ram gave the following two responses. Response number one is a guy is walking in the street and there's a wagon full of packages. One package falls out and the package is a package full of money. So the guy picks up the package and he runs after the wagon trying to return the package. So someone sees him. I ruined the majesty of the way Avram responded. He said, I could answer you with a story, or could answer you with the intellectual perspective of Chassidus. The answer with the intellectual perspective of Chassidus is that although Chochmah is the highest of all the spheres, Chochmah is a real first concealment of godliness. Yeah, it's about the truth, how Hashem is alone, nothing besides him, but it's about how this truth is projected to the outside. It's the beginning of the world of Atzilus, beginning of something other to godliness. So Chachma, however great Chachma is called wisdom. Chachma is a concealment of godliness. And second of all, he told him this story about this guy who finds his package in the street and he runs after the wagon that dropped it. And someone says to him, hello, Yankel, use your intelligence. Why do you want to return the package? Don't you realize that you could have this for yourself? So Avram said, if you use your seichel, use your intelligence only, you could end up making lots and lots of mistakes, end up stealing. Anyways, so getting back to our subject over here, Atik is far beyond the level of Chachma. Atik is not about the way the truth of Hashem projects to the world, and from Chachma eventually emanates to our world as well. Rather, Atik is ein imuvade. Atik is a copy of the truth that existed before the Tzimtzum. That means that there's nothing other than him. So about this level, that level our Aveda cannot affect. Concerning this level, it says, concerning this level, it says, if you have sinned, what effect do you have? If you've done abundance of transgressions, what do you do to him? If you were at tzaddik, what did you give to him? You can't possibly affect this level. That's what the Rebbe says in his Beis, explaining the various verses and passages which seem to contradict each other. It depends on arich and atik. It's a tomato kind of thing. It depends what you're talking about. Are you talking about arich or talking about atik? When do we say that our Aveda affects things? That's arich and below arich. When do we say that our Aveda, our efforts cannot affect things? That's in atik. Okay. However, is gimel. And we still need to understand when it says in the Torah, you should serve the Lord your God, and we asked before, that seems, is there anything missing in God's house that we could possibly service him? But when it says in the Torah, you should serve Hashem, it's not only referring to the levels of the spiritual cosmos, where our Aveda affects, our service of Hashem affects, so to speak, beyond the spiritual cosmos. In Atzmos, in God's essence. How do we know that? Where does it come from? What's the source? Where does it say that? One understands by first prefacing another question. It seems that this verse contradicts itself. The pasuk says, you should serve the Lord your God, he will bless you. And then the pasuk continues and says, and I will remove sickness from your midst. The Torah switches from the third person to the second person. or the first person. It says, first it says, you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless. And then it says, as if there's a third person, a narrator talking. There's a narrator describing and saying, and he will bless you if you do this and this. But then it switches and says, I will remove illness from you. As if he himself is speaking. So is there a narrator here, or is he speaking? Who is the author of this verse? Who is talking in this verse? The narrator or Hashem himself? Who in general, when you say the Torah has a narrator, who is a narrator in the Torah? Nachmanides writes in his intro to his explanation for the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu did not write the Torah as him speaking, as him being the narrator. Rather, Moshe Rabbeinu, on the first 4 books of the Torah, in the 5th book of the Torah, it is written, Moshe Rabbeinu is the one speaking in the 5th book of the Torah. The first 4 books of the Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu is writing as a narrator. It says in the Torah, God spoke to Moses. So who is writing that? Not God and not Moses. There's a third person, so to speak, writing those words that God spoke to Moses. That's the way the Torah is presented in the third person. If Moshe Rabbeinu were to be the author of the sentence, God spoke to Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu would have said, God spoke to me. If Hashem were the author of that statement, God spoke to Moses, God would have said, I spoke to Moses. Rather, the Torah describes things in third person. The one who is speaking is not Hashem, and it's not Moshe. Rather, there is a, so to speak, third entity who is describing conversation between Hashem and Moshe. That's what Nachmanides says. What is this third person about? What does that mean? The meaning of the third person that's talking is beyond the 2 people or the 2 entities in the sentence. It's higher than Moshe and higher than the name of Hashem Yukivavke. The word for Hashem's name, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, means something. Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is comprised of 3 words: past, present, and future. But unlike everything else in the world, it's not only that Hashem is eternal, that he once was, now is, and soon will be, but as the Zohar emphasizes, at the same moment he was, he also is and will be. In other words, Hashem is beyond time. So Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is a word, a name of Hashem that emphasizes and expresses Hashem's transcendence. That's what name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei means. It means Hashem's infinity, Hashem's transcendence. So what is higher than Hashem's transcendence? So seemingly the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is, as explained in other places in Chassidus, a name that describes God's essence. And that's true, that the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is a name that is that describes Hashem's essence. There was, I don't want to misquote this, but I'm not sure I remember this exactly correctly. There was, in one of the meals in the Rebbe's table, the Rebbe said the following, that there is nothing higher than Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. There is a way Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is limited to the letters of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and there is a way Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is beyond letters. But when you say Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei indeed refers to God's essence, but that's beyond the letters Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. In other words, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, the letters of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, as every letter in the Aleph base, the form of the letter has to do with a kind of godly energy that's being transmitted. So the letter Yud, which is the smallest of all letters, indicates a contraction. The letter Hey, which has a indicates an expansion, and letter Vav, which is a line going down, indicates how the godliness descends, and the letter Hey indicates another expansion. I'm not going to get into that now, but the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is about the whole process of Seder Shtalshelus, of the whole process of how things are created in Shtalshelus. That's the way Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is as a name of Hashem, as it is with letters. So the name Yukevavke is associated with Hisavos. Yukevavke is a name of Havaya Hamahava. Yukevavke is about creation. Yukevavke means to create too. So although it means transcendence, it also means creation. But the level above, beyond both of them, is this is the essence of Hashem. Hashem himself, the essence of Hashem, is the one who is narrating the Torah, and he is describing, he's telling us what happened in the spiritual cosmos. He's saying, and there's a way I contracted myself as Yukevavke. There's a way that I created a human being named Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is what happened, the conversation between Yukevavke and Moshe Rabbeinu. Who is talking? Atzmus is describing, the essence of Hashem is describing what happened in the spiritual cosmos. He said, he's talking about this conversation to Havaya and Moshe, and he is called the third person. Okay. The number 3 is significant in describing the essence of Hashem. Not because of what we learned in the last Maimer, last Sikha, about the number 3 being unity, but the number 3 is significant for another reason, and that is all of the spiritual cosmos is associated with 2 different kinds of energy. There is the immanent energy, Mimalik Alomin, and there's Sevik Alomin, there's a transcendent energy. So the Pasuk says, Hashem will give us life from 2 days, and on the 3rd day, he will lift us up and we'll live before him. This Pasuk is talking about the resurrection of the dead, and it says on the 3rd day, we will be resurrected. What's the meaning of the 3rd day will be resurrected? So this says that the resurrection of the dead is something that only comes from Hashem's essence. That's what we say in our prayers. Hashem resurrects the dead with his great mercy. That Rachim Rabim is referring to Hashem's essence. The resurrection of that is only possible from Hashem's essence. So there is a life that Hashem gives us, which is mamali, which is limited. And there is a life that Hashem gives us, which is transcendent. But then there is the resurrection of the dead, which comes from Hashem's essence. And that's described as the 3rd element. Of course, Hashem is not in numbers of 1s and 2s and 3s, but the number 3 is a number which denotes Hashem's essence, because it's not like the first 2 energies, which are transcendent or immanent, which are within creation or beyond creation. Just for a second to explain what this means, there is, we learned another Meimarim, there is Hashem's limited light, which is filtered throughout the spiritual cosmos and gives each creature its life force, and each creature is different. There's the words of Hashem that in the 10 utterances, the 22 letters of the alphabet, which create every single being. Then there is Hashem's infinity. Hashem is beyond being in any specific creation. Hashem is everywhere. But Hashem's infinity, Hashem's infinite light, is also limited in the sense that it is meant to be infinite. Being infinite means it's not not confined. But then there is Hashem himself, who is not infinite, is not finite. Who's not limited to being finite, is not limited either to being infinite. He is the one who produces, who is the source of both his revelation and his concealment, his limited light, his infinite light. He's kol yochel. He could do anything. Hashem's essence, which is, there's no things, just Hashem himself. So Hashem himself is not like any of the first 2 kinds of energy, rather it's Hashem himself. So when it says, when Nachmanides says that Hashem is a narrator for the Torah, that means that God's essence is a narrator for the Torah. The number 3 means God's essence. So what that means is that when Hashem says, I will remove illness from you, that means I, the essence of Hashem, not talking about the way I contracted myself and limited myself through Ishtalshalos. I'm talking about the way I am in my essence. I remove illness from your midst. So why does Torah switch and start with you shall serve Hashem and then switch to I will remove illness? Mit Hashem we'll discuss. But for our purposes for today, what we learned today is that yes, our Torah mitzvah seems to only affect arich, not atik, but that's only atik. If the conversation were to be discuss Hashem's essence, then there will be a whole different discussion. Now we would say that our Torah mitzvah does affect Hashem's essence. Now, if it doesn't affect atik, how could it possibly affect Hashem's essence? How can anything affect Hashem's essence? Is there anything missing in the house of the king? So, which we'll discuss tomorrow, I guess we'll leave that with a question. Just one line says that Alter Rebbe said about creation, a taivis kinkashi. You can't really explain why Hashem wanted the world. Hashem has a desire. About a desire of Hashem, you can't ask any questions. So Hashem desires our Torah mitzvahs, and therefore his desire comes from his essence, and therefore our Torah mitzvahs, so to speak, he cares about it. Anyways, any other questions or comments?
What are we supposed to do with this?
Very good question. Number one, we're supposed to realize that the Eibishter cares about you doing Torah mitzvahs and what you're doing. It's not just Raimanis Friedman, he considers this mimer as the cornerstone of all of Yiddishkeit. That God isn't just saying you got to do a bunch of things, but that he cares. It matters to him. It affects him, so to speak. It bothers me. Every ben nefashos, every baruch Shmei, every amen, every coming to shul. What time are you here today? Okay. Anyways, have a great day, Reb Zev. Great day, David. Great day, Mechamar. Yeah.
Rabbi Levin.
Yeah, better.
You asked your mind about a letter from the Rebbe about the meeting.
Thank you very much. I'll send a letter right now. Thank you very much. All right. Great day, David. Great day, Mechamar. Great day, Beryl. Great day, Dr. Bressman. And great day, Jeff. Great day, Innocent.